Sex is like a chore for me, in that it's required to procreate. Otherwise, I just don't have the urge. Sex brings pleasure to some people, but I don't need it. I get along just fine without sex.
I just find vaginas and penises repulsive. I think they're the ugliest parts of humans. Lennart, Akaya, and Martin are asexual, meaning they don't feel sexual attraction to other people. Lennart lives in Hamburg. Along the so-called Reeperbahn is the heart of the red light district, where visitors find porn cinemas, lap dancers and sex workers. But no part of the scene is of interest to the 38-year-old.
When I see this, I think this is some pretty old airbrushing. The proportions are off, the colors are faded, it's just a trashy image. But I wouldn't think, ooh, breasts. Now I want to go touch some. I see it more as a bad advertisement for something I don't understand.
Lennart noticed when he was still in puberty that sex didn't have the same appeal for him as it did for others. Suddenly everyone was talking about it, but he didn't understand what all the fuss was about. He tried it anyway.
I've just never understood what's so great or special about it. I can do it, and it didn't gross me out, but I just don't care for it, and I'd rather not do it.
Didn't feel the same way as others. I tried being intimate for the first time quite late, and I realized that I didn't like it then either. Akaya grew up in the countryside near Bielefeld. As a teenager, she just wanted to fit in. Although she didn't enjoy sex, she succumbed to peer pressure. No matter how many times I said I still wasn't enjoying it, or had no desire to do it, I always got the same answer. That someday, when I really loved the person, I'd be intimate and enjoy it. But that just never happened. Martin, too, had no interest in sex. In his youth, not knowing what he was feeling, he searched for other explanations.
I used to think maybe I was gay, because if I wasn't attracted to girls, then I must be attracted to guys. Because there's nothing else. Every person must have some sexual attraction. But after a little while, I realized it wasn't that either.
Martin grew up in the 1960s. At that time, there wasn't a term to describe his feelings. Now he knows how to explain his asexuality.
Say I'm talking with a heterosexual man. I'd ask, now imagine you see a really handsome young man, great build, muscular, really a very, very handsome man. What kind of sexual attraction do you have? And the answer, 99% of the time, is none at all, or almost none. And then I say, okay, now imagine this also happens with a beautiful woman.
Lennart was in his early 30s when he learned about asexuality. A few years later, he came out as asexual. He now lives without sex, and the inconveniences that came along with it.
Ever since I stopped having sexual relationships, there's been less hassle in my daily life. I don't have to constantly shower or change my bed sheets. It's just practical.
Free from romantic relationships, friendships are now especially important to him.
Sometimes I notice that a person is important to me, but that doesn't mean that I want to be with them all the time, or that I want to enter in some kind of classic relationship with them. So it doesn't bother me at all if the person is perhaps already in a relationship.
For Martin, it was different. Even if he felt no sexual attraction, he had always wanted a solid relationship. He met his future wife on a sailboat when he was in his mid-20s. For a long time, they didn't have sex.
People always say love and sex unequivocally belong together, that they're inseparable, but that's total nonsense. There are so many people who have sex without being in love. Otherwise, all the brothels would go out of business. So why can't love work without sex? It simply isn't necessary in a relationship.
Martin also knew he wanted children, although conceiving them was more challenging for him than for some.
For me, sex feels like some type of work. It serves a purpose, like having children, for example. I have to focus completely on my body. I don't fantasize or play out scenarios in my head or something. It's purely a bodily function, and I have to be very conscious of what I'm doing. Nothing happens automatically.
Akaya too wanted a partnership. She and Merle are happy together. They don't have sex. They prefer activities like making costumes together.
I feel
that having conversations with the other person gives me more than intimate contact does. Talking is how I feel closer to people and how I connect with them. Because everyone has their own quirks, and I think that's what I learn to love in a person when we're building a relationship. The pair met on a dating website, where they both stated that they were asexual and were looking for an asexual partner. If it was someone who wasn't asexual, I'd have to ask them to go without sex, and I don't like that. We just don't miss it, so it's not a sacrifice. And that makes me feel better. Martin and his wife don't miss regular sex. She accepts his asexuality, but that doesn't mean they aren't close.
My wife and I have nothing against touching. I always say we go to sleep every night in each other's arms. But it never, or very, very rarely, leads to what you would really call sex. It just isn't needed, or missed.
No sex with a partner, but with oneself is a different matter. For many asexual people, masturbation is part of their lives.
It's important to understand that there's a difference between libido and sexual attraction to a person or a thing. For asexual persons, if they masturbate, it's more like, okay, there's a physical need that can be satisfied in this way. For some, it's pleasurable. For others, it's like blowing their nose or scratching an itch. And then it's over. It really is a bodily function, something the body wants. But it has nothing to do with fantasizing or sexual attraction.
Akaya doesn't have the urge to masturbate. She talks about it openly among her friends. Somebody asked me when I'd last masturbated, and I said I never had. And they all looked at me funny and said, "What? Of course you have." They all thought I was joking. And I told them I'd never felt the need, and never thought about it, and didn't see any reason for it. When the 22-year-old tells people she doesn't need masturbation or sex, many don't understand. I'm not the slimmest, so I get comments along the lines of, "You're too fat for that anyway, you can't get anyone off." Some people also misunderstand and ask if I only like anal. I've heard that before too. Lennart has also been confronted with questions about his asexuality. Now he talks openly about it and often receives unsolicited advice.
Hey, have you thought about having your hormone levels checked? Maybe you're repressing something bad that happened in the past. You might want to go into therapy or go on medication. There's this tendency to deny people their humanity, because sex is supposedly this thing that makes us human. People often confuse asexuality with loss of libido, but they should know they're different things.
To raise awareness about asexuality, Martin goes to Christopher Street Day, an annual parade to push for LGBTQ rights and celebrate queer life.
It's to demonstrate and to make asexuality visible. I find this incredibly important, especially for young people and for people who don't even know that this orientation exists. And it also doesn't hurt to have a gray-haired person like me take part.
Lennart also wants to help people accept their asexuality.
If a person is thinking they might be asexual, I would advise them to trust what's there and to be themselves. For me, getting to know other asexual people helped a lot.
Akaya and Merle are happy in their relationship, completely sex-free. A relationship is not just built on sex. You can spend time together in a different way and create your own type of intimacy.
It's become even clearer to me just how much I love my wife. We've been together for 26 years, and I can still say I love her today as much as I did on the first day. Not everyone can say that.
Lennart, Martin, Akaya. The three navigate their asexuality very differently. But they have one thing in common. They don't want anyone telling them what intimacy means.
Weil er erzählt in einem Interview, dass das voll anstrengend auf Dauer ist.